In 1989, a book was published that would go on to sell over 40 million copies in 40 languages. It would be read by presidents, CEOs, Olympic athletes, and students in dormitory rooms at 2 in the morning trying to figure out what to do with their lives. But here is the thing most people don't know about that book. Stephen Covey didn't write it to teach you how to be more productive. He didn't write it to help you manage your calendar, or close more deals, or optimize your morning routine. He wrote it because he spent years studying success literature going back 200 years, and he noticed something that unsettled him deeply. For the first 150 years, the literature on success was about character, integrity, courage, patience, humility, the internal qualities of a person who had become someone worthy of the life they were living. Then, sometime in the early 20th century, the literature shifted. It became about technique, personality, image, tactics, how to appear trustworthy rather than be trustworthy, how to influence people rather than deserve their trust. Covey called this the personality ethic, and his argument was that it had produced a generation of people who were highly skilled at performing effectiveness without ever becoming effective. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is his answer to that shift. Not a collection of tactics, a complete framework for building the character from the inside out that makes every tactic unnecessary. Let's break it. Section 1, Inside Out, not outside in. Before the 7 Habits, Covey lays a foundation that separates this book from almost everything else in the self-help space. He introduces the concept of the paradigm, the lens through which you see the world. Not the world itself, the map you use to navigate it. And his argument is this: 2 people can look at the same situation, the same relationship, the same opportunity, and see something completely different. Not because one is right and one is wrong, but because their maps are different. Most personal development tries to change behavior. Covey says that is the wrong starting point. Change the map first. The behavior follows naturally. He calls this the inside-out approach, the understanding that lasting change in your results, your relationships, and your life always begins with a shift in how you see, never with a new technique applied to the same old lens. This is the foundation every habit is built on, and without it, the habits are just tactics. With it, they become a transformation. Section 2, The Private Victory Habits, 1, 2, and 3. Covey divides the 7 habits into 2 groups, what he calls the private victory and the public victory. You cannot have the second without the first. The private victory is about your relationship with yourself, your self-mastery, your internal world, and it lives in the first 3 habits. Habit 1, be proactive. This is the foundational habit, and it is more radical than it sounds. Covey draws a distinction between 2 types of people. The reactive person is driven by conditions, by how they feel, by what others do, by the weather, the traffic, the comment someone made in a meeting last Tuesday. Their mood, their motivation, their behavior, all of it is a function of what happens around them. The proactive person operates differently. They understand that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lives their freedom. The freedom to choose their response, regardless of the condition. To act from values rather than feelings. To be the author of their behavior, rather than its audience. Covey is not describing toxic positivity, the pretense that circumstances don't matter. He is describing the most important skill any human being can develop, the ability to respond rather than simply react. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. This habit is built on a thought experiment Covey calls the funeral visualization. Imagine you are at a funeral. You walk to the front of the room. You look inside the casket, and you realize it is yours. 3 people stand up to speak. Someone from your family, a close friend, A colleague, what do you want them to say? Not what you think they will say. What do you want them to say? That gap between what they would say today and what you want them to say is your work. Habit 2 is about defining that gap before you spend another day filling it with urgency that doesn't lead there. Covey calls it writing your personal mission statement, a clear, specific articulation of who you want to be and what you want to build, and using it as the compass every decision is measured against. Habit 3, put first things first. This is where the philosophy becomes a system. Covey introduces the time management matrix, 4 quadrants that divide every task by whether it is urgent, not urgent, important, or not important. Most people spend their days in quadrant 1, urgent and important, crisis mode, reacting to whatever is loudest. The highly effective person lives primarily in quadrant 2. Not urgent, but important. Planning, relationship building, prevention. Learning, the work that never screams for attention, but produces everything that matters long term. The principle is simple and hard to live. You have to say no to the urgent in order to say yes to the important, and most people never do. Because the urgent is loud, the important is quiet, and the quiet is easy to postpone until it becomes a crisis. Section 3, the public victory habits 4, 5, and 6. Once the private victory is built, Covey moves to relationships and the habits that make every human interaction more effective, more honest, and more durable. Habit 4, think win-win. Most people operate from one of 2 defaults in any negotiation, conflict, or collaboration. Win-lose, I need to come out ahead for this to have been worth it, or lose-win, keeping the peace, is more important than getting what I need. Covey argues both are fundamentally short-sighted. Win-win is not a compromise. It is a genuinely higher solution, one that requires enough courage to state your needs clearly, and enough consideration to care about the other person's needs equally. Most people have one of those 2. The truly effective person develops both and refuses to accept a solution that doesn't work for everyone in the room. Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. This is the habit Covey says most people find the simplest to understand and the hardest to practice. When someone is speaking to us, most of us are not listening to understand. We are listening to reply. We are waiting for our turn, already formulating our response, our advice, our counterpoint, while the other person is still mid-sentence. Covey calls this autobiographical listening, hearing everything through the filter of our own experience, our own frame, our own need to be understood first. The shift, listen with the intent to truly understand, not to agree, not to fix, not to respond, to understand. When people feel genuinely heard, not processed, not handled, but heard, something fundamental changes in the conversation. The walls come down. The real problem surfaces. And the solution, when it comes, has somewhere solid to land. Habit 6, Synergise. This is the habit that most people gloss over, and Covey considers the highest expression of all the others. Synergy is not compromise, where both people give something up and meet in the middle. Synergy is the discovery of a third option, one that neither person could have reached alone, that is better than either of their original positions, and that is only possible when both people are secure enough in themselves to genuinely value the perspective they don't share. 1 + 1 = 3, or 10, or 100, but only when both people are more committed to the solution than to being right. Section 4, Habit 7, and the reframe. The 7th habit sits outside the 2 victories. It is the habit that sustains all the others. Habit 7, Sharpen the Saw. Covey uses the image of a man sawing through a tree, working frantically, exhausting himself, making slow progress. Someone walks by and asks, "Why don't you sharpen the saw?" The man says, "I don't have time to sharpen the saw. I'm too busy cutting." This is the trap, and it is everywhere. The person too busy to sleep properly, too overwhelmed to exercise, too behind to read, reflect, or learn anything new, grinding at full speed with a blunt instrument, and calling it dedication. Covey identifies 4 dimensions of renewal: physical, mental, social and emotional, and spiritual. All 4 need regular, deliberate investment, not as a reward for finishing the work, as the condition that makes the work possible. The saw does not sharpen itself, and the person who stops sharpening is not working harder than everyone else. They are working slower, with a tool that used to cut through walls, and now struggles with wood. So here is the pattern this book is asking you to break: the pattern of reaching for techniques before building the character that makes techniques work, of trying to manage your time before you've decided what your time is for, of listening to reply instead of listening to understand, of grinding the saw instead of taking 10 minutes to sharpen it. Stephen Covey spent his life arguing that effectiveness is not a performance. It is not the right words, the right system, the right morning routine applied on top of a character that hasn't been examined. It is the slow, private, unglamorous work of becoming someone whose habits are a natural expression of who they are, not a daily performance of who they're trying to seem. Begin with the end in mind. Put first things first. Seek first to understand, and sharpen the saw, because the quality of everything you build is limited by the quality of the person building it. Now, if something in this video shifted something in you, if one idea landed differently, challenged something you'd been holding on to, or reconnected you to something you already knew, but needed to hear again, tell me which habit hit hardest for you. Drop it in the comments below, not because it helps the algorithm, though it does, but because I genuinely want to know where this landed for you. These conversations are the reason this channel exists. And if you want more breakdowns like this one, books that don't just inform you, but actually change how you see, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We have already broken down Atomic Habits, Mastery, the Psychology of Money, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, Getting Things Done, and more. All on this channel, all waiting for you. And if this video gave you something worth keeping, a like takes 1 second. And it tells YouTube this kind of content is worth putting in front of more people who need to hear it. Think differently, live intentionally. I'll see you in the next one.